Here we go. Right. Okay, so the paper we read this week was titled Mindset Matters, Exercise and the Placebo Effect. This was a paper by Crum and Langer in 2007. And the background of the whole study was that they were thinking the placebo effect is an effect that is not attributed to an actual pharmaceutical drug or remedy, but rather is attributed to the individual's mindset. So beliefs or mindless beliefs and expectations. The therapeutic benefit of the placebo effect is very widely accepted, that accounting for it has become a standard in clinical drug trials to distinguish pharmaceutical effects from the placebo effect and the placebo effect from other possible confounding factors. So the placebo effect does not have to involve inert pills or sham procedures, but generally can be anything, symbols, beliefs, and expectations that can also elicit powerful physiological occurrences, both positive and negatives. So I'm curious to hear just for a little bit of interactions right off the start, what sort of placebo effects you have seen or can think of. I thought of even just the fact that when people wear a doctor's coat or a certain uniform or whatever, they have a certain belief. Well, maybe it's more of a preconception or a yeah, I guess a value that they attribute to that. If someone in a coach says or tells them to take something, it's more credible than if someone was dressed regularly, for instance. Or there's also research showing that things like ibuprofen or things with like a name drug, they tend to have a higher physiological effect or outcome than the exact same thing that might be a non-name brand, for instance, or then with certain clients, I have seen that, if they are of the conviction of like carbs are bad or carbs make me, I don't know, gain weight straight away or so, that often their body is actually adapting or has actually adapted that belief and they are not responding to carbs that well, in fact. So I think there's a lot to take from that as a coach also in the sense of, okay, let's work with our clients' beliefs, even if we know that theoretically or to our knowledge, there is no evidence for this. But yeah, I'm curious, does anyone have any thoughts or any thing that comes to mind when it comes to certain placebo effects, placebo things that they have seen in real life? And hi, Allison.
I guess like my mind jumps to immediately like supplements for one. Like someone could immediately think like a certain supplement is magic, and we've certainly seen like that in the past for sure, as well as certain brands of supplements as well. But also like from more my field of expertise in terms of physical therapy, it's someone might have a prior belief about a certain type of treatment or a certain whether that's for or against it, and they might really think that something works for them versus not. So yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, very good point. And I think, and there's actually even studies when it comes to steroids where they're showing that, like, hey, they're telling everyone they're taking steroids, and the people that are actually on the non-steroid arm have bigger gains than the people that are actually on the steroid arm of the trials, which is, yeah, mind-blowing, I think. Cool. Anyone else? Any other thoughts? No? Okay, cool. Well,
I was actually just going to say kind of similar to what you mentioned here about the carbs are bad and fat is going to make me fat. Those are kind of more common real life scenarios.
yeah, absolutely.
I do think as well the because I think they gave the example of caffeine as well, and
Mhm.
I've had colleagues who have been like, oh my gosh, what have you put in this coffee? And it's like it's decaf. And and it's literally it's true. I've literally seen that sort of thing happen. So it's really funny.
That's awesome. All right. So furthermore to the background, they're citing another study. So Kaplan and Camacho in 1983, they conducted a cohort studies of 6,928 adults and found that perceived health was a better predictor of mortality than actual health. So, and then on top of that, Idler and Castle in 1991 conducted a study where elderly persons or were elderly persons who perceived their health as poor were 6 times more likely to die than those who perceived their health as excellent, regardless of actual health status. I think that's mind-blowing, really, and just really demonstrates the importance of mindset and keeping positive, especially throughout recovery and all those kind of stuff as well. So for this particular study, they took room attendants, or they found that room attendants may not perceive their work as exercise. If they do not, and if the relationship between exercise and health is moderated by mindset, then these workers may not be receiving the full health benefits of their exercise, or maybe even negative ones, depending on their beliefs. So similarly, if their mindsets are shifted so that they become aware of the exercise they're getting, then health improvements would be expected to follow. So that's kind of the hypothesis of the study. And then for the methods, they recruited subjects from hotels or through hotels, and to prevent information contamination, they assigned all room attendants within a hotel to the same condition. So 7 hotels were randomly assigned to one of 2 conditions, four informed and 3 control conditions. So they took the hotel room attendants and the informed or the hotel room attendants in the informed condition, received a write-up which discussed the benefits of exercise, and they were informed that their daily housekeeping work satisfied the CDC, so Center for Disease Control and Prevention's recommendation for an active lifestyle. Specifically, they were told that exercise does not need to be hard or painful to be good for one's health, but that it is simply a matter of moving one's muscles and burning calories, so accumulating approximately 200 calories per day to meet the recommendations. And they were given specific details of the average calorie expenditure for various of their activities. So, for example, changing linens for 15 minutes burns 40 calories, or vacuuming for 15 minutes burns 50 calories, cleaning bathrooms for 15 minutes burns 60 calories, that kind of thing. And they were told that although these figures were based on results for the average 140-pound women, each of them would burn calories at a different rate, but that it was clear that they were all easily meeting and even exceeding the Surgeon General's recommendations. So this sheet was written in English and Spanish to make sure everyone was understanding it, and was also read to them and explained to the subjects, and then posted on the bulletin board of their lounge. The subjects were told that they were interested in getting information on their health. So the study the people conducting the study, and so that they could study ways to improve it, and in return for helping, they would receive information about research on health and happiness. The subjects in the control group were given the latter information as those in the informed group, but they did not receive information about how their work is good exercise until after the second set of measurements were taken. So they had 84 subjects, 44 in the informed group and 40 in the control group. And these subjects' age ranges were from 18 to 55 years old. Most were Hispanic, although there were some Caucasian, some African American, some Asian, and all of them worked 32 to 40 hours per week and cleaned approximately 15 rooms per day. So first of all, wow, kudos. That's impressive. But yeah, statistical analysis revealed that at the onset of the investigation, the groups did not differ significantly except in age. This unexpected difference was controlled though for all in the analyses. Measures were taken before and after this information was revealed. So self-reported exercise was measured, weight and body fat percentage via bioelectrical impedance measure, BMI, waist to hip ratio, blood pressure, substance abuse and diet through questions, asking subjects to reflect on their habits over the past 30 days. That included how much they ate relative to their normal intake, how many cigarettes they smoked, how many servings of vegetables and sugary foods they ate, and how many glasses of caffeinated beverages, alcoholic beverages, and water they drank. The results were astonishing. So to determine if the placebo effect plays a role in the benefits of exercise, this study investigated whether subjects' mindset, in this case, their perceived levels of exercise, could inhibit or enhance the health benefits of, of exercise independently of actual exercise. So what we can see here in all these graphs essentially is that before and after this information was spread, the group that received the information obviously increased the amount of exercise that they perceived to be getting because suddenly they were aware, hey, what I'm doing at work is exercise. The perception of regularly exercising went up. The perception of work as exercise went up. All that makes sense. But a lot more importantly for us here is that their mean average weight went down, their BMI went down, their percentage of body fat went down, their diastolic blood pressure went down, their systolic blood pressure went down, and their waist to hip ratio went down. So, I mean, we have criticized the like in-body scan or other bioelectrical impedance measures many a time. So I'm super, super happy that they did not just have that one measure. They used BMI, waist to hip ratio, like many, many things that really demonstrated, hey, there is a difference between one group to another just for receiving this information and for what appears to be changing their beliefs. So they thought it was important to note that although the informed room attendants did report higher levels of exercise at the end of the study, they did not report getting any additional exercise outside of work. In addition, although the subjects in the informed group showed a significant increase in recognizing their work as a form of exercise, their actual workload did not change. So it was not like suddenly that one group, got an extra 10 hours of actual work on top of their usual schedule, nor did their habits. So food was the same before and after, and everything else was essentially the same before and after. Thus, the changes in reported physical activity appear to be attributable not to actual increase in physical activity, but to a shift in mindset initiated by the information given to them in the intervention. This shift in mindset in the informed group was accompanied by remarkable improvement in physiological measures associated with exercise. After only 4 weeks of knowing that their work is good exercise, the subjects in the informed group lost an average of 2 pounds, 6 lowered their systolic blood pressure by 10 points, 10 were significantly healthier as measured by body fat percentage, BMI, and waist to hip ratio. These were small but meaningful changes, and or these were small but meaningful changes given the state of health the subjects were in, especially considering that the change occurred in just 4 weeks. All of the changes were significantly greater than the changes in the control group, and these results support their hypothesis that increasing perceived exercise independently of actual exercise results in subsequent physiological improvements. So yes, of course, first of all, I thought I heard about this study first on a podcast episode, Huberman Lab, obviously, about the placebo effect. I think the whole episode is titled Placebo Effect. And he mentions another study, which I also wanted to look at, but it was basically a study that showed, so two groups were given different kinds of milkshake, or no, the same kind of milkshake. One group was told that it's like a 400-calorie milkshake, and the other group was told that it's a 140 calorie milkshake, and the other group was told it's a 620 calorie milkshake, but it was actually the same exact milkshake for both. And they reported very, very different levels of hunger, but also they measured leptin and ghrelin, and that there was a significant difference for both, which also I thought was like mind-blowing. Just by believing something has more calories or less calories, we're changing how our body really responds. So just wanted to add that on there, even though we didn't read that one, but that's also discussed in the podcast episode in case anyone's interested. Um, but yeah, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts if that was a new study to you or if you had heard of this one before.
I've heard of the milkshake one, but I hadn't heard of the one that we just read. So that was really interesting. The bit in the beginning about the placebo effect, particularly when it was talking about medication for depression, kind of blew my mind. I was like, 51% is due to the placebo effect with the efficacy of the medication. I thought that was crazy. Um, but this study, I had a lot of questions. Like I was thinking like maybe you're telling the people in the study that their job is good exercise. And so that is in front of their mind. And so they're thinking, oh, well, I'm getting good exercise. Maybe I'll take the stairs today. Maybe the way that they're doing the actual work, though the workload hasn't changed and the work hasn't changed, maybe the way that they're doing the work was affected by the knowledge that this was also their exercise time. So maybe they're like, I'm going to move a little faster, or I'm going to take the stairs, or like maybe it influenced something that was involved in the change. I don't know.
I mean, there is a possibility, obviously, even though they didn't report it differently, but it would have been interesting to have them have like a Fitbit or,
Mhm.
Apple Watch or something that's slightly more accurate to actually gauge, like maybe wear it for a few weeks before and then for a few weeks after or like during the thing. So yeah, that would have been super interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
I think just off the back of that point, and I'm sorry if I missed this, but they didn't mention anything with regards to nutrition, and kind of similar to what Alison said, where if they're thinking, oh, I'm naturally doing more exercise, if they maybe sort of slightly change their nutrition, in maybe they start
They did
healthier.
assess that actually,
Oh, cool.
but only via questionnaire. So I mean, how accurate is that? However, they did like specifically ask, did you change anything in your nutrition over the last 4 weeks? And they said no. It appeared, at least according to this questionnaire, that literally everything, their habits, smoking, whatever, exercise outside of their work, remained the same. But yeah.
Yeah. Very holistic study. I mean, it seemed like they thought of a lot of the variables, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, I mean, Huberman always goes on about Elia Crum, which is one of the authors of the study, and that she has a lot of great study designs. So I'd be interested to see more of her work. I haven't looked into much of it. Anyone
Mm,
else?
yeah, I wanted to say I did hear a podcast also about placebo effect because it's shocking, and every time I read it, it's like I really can't believe it. But there was this case study was a patient with irritable bowel syndrome, and her doctor told her, "I will give you placebo pills," and he improved,
Even
and
though
he
she
was
was told she's getting
he
placebo.
know he knows that it's placebo, but she improved. And she had a very bad case and it improved, and at some point the study or the experiment or whatever ended, so the doctor told her, okay, well, this is over, so you're not getting the pills anymore. And she asked, can I please still get the prescription for the pills? I really need them. And she kept on having the pills, and she at some point died, but her IBS was under control because of the sugar pills.
Wow, so interesting. I mean, technically, is that considered nocebo? I'm not even sure, but
No,
because she
it is an open placebo. It's called an
open
open
placebo.
placebo.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
you it works even in that case.
Interesting.
And I mean, I live in Germany. There is wouldn't like to say millions, but I think it is millions of people who actually believe that homeopathy cures them.
Yeah, yeah.
So there is a gigantic experiment here, and they believe that it does. And even if you show them evidence that it doesn't, uh, they still get better when they have it. So it is shocking for me, but yeah,
I
it is
mean,
true.
I mean, at the end there, I also put like under the thoughts, things that might have come up in the sense of like faith for some people, you know, like they say that faith can change mountains or can cure people, and I truly think that that can be true. Like if you believe that whatever savior is saving you or whatever, if that is your belief, it has a lot of power. So I'm not surprised that a tiny pill, which might have a nice label and stuff, but yeah, it's crazy how it can actually change the like your belief literally creates a physiological response.
It is a difficult pill to swallow.
Yeah, pun intended, yes.
Yeah, it is difficult, but it is true. Also, in the other way, Meno had a chapter related to placebo and nocebo, and he also relates a case of someone who was in the hospital, like about to die in the UCI, because he tried to commit suicide. So he had a big bottle of pills, and they couldn't find out what he had poisoned himself with, and he was not conscious, so he couldn't say it. And they managed to figure out that he was part of a trial, and they managed that to unblind to see what he was consuming, and he was part of the control group. He was taking placebo pills, but he was literally dying, unconscious,
Hmm.
and um, obviously he had to come back to consciousness, and they explained him that he had placebo pills, that it was sugar. And it was, oh, okay, well, then I think that's it, right? Walk out of the UCI.
Oh wow. He was
It,
cured.
yes, it was over. I mean, the way Meno has it has all the data, like his heartbeat was this, his pressure was this, his breathing was very shallow. He was in the UCI connected and
That's,
unconscious, and that's why he couldn't give a lot of information. And when they managed to tell him that, well, you actually were having the placebo, so when you committed suicide, you actually just had a bunch of sugar pills. He was like, oh, okay, well, then that's it, over.
yeah.
So
It's
it,
crazy how it really transfers into like all
yep,
many places in life. Like I think even including like training as well. You know, if you started off training and were like taught by someone who was quite dogmatic and but you admired that person, you take on everything that they're saying and you're following them, and then suddenly that is it. But then you might change something, and then suddenly your thinking makes your physiology respond differently. It's insane. It really is. Um, yeah. Any other thoughts? No? Okay. Melissa wanted to share some other research with us today because she had a like a lecture, or I mean you tell us how you got into it, I guess.
yeah. You would have to put the presentation though, because I am in my mobile
Oh,
because
okay,
I was
gotcha.
but basically, guys, was I was invited to a seminar about Western diet and dementia risk. And the conference was really interesting. It was a bit too deep for the group, but I did some screenshots of some slides that were shocking. And two of them that I can remember from my top of my head was that it is predicted that by 2050, more than half the population is going to be either obese or overweight. And the second paper say that having obesity or overweight, no, obesity during your mid years increases your risk of dementia by 380%. So that was dramatic to me. It was like, we're heading to disaster. And some of the papers that he mentioned in the reference, one of them I read on the train back from Bonn that I was in yesterday, and I wanted to share it with the group. I wouldn't say that we should all read it because it's really technical and epidemiological, but one of the PhD students of the lab came to me and said, look, you read this paper, you can actually ask GPT to make a summary for you. So the presentation that we have today is the summary that GPT made of the paper that I read.
Cool.
So that you know that this is the take of GPT. I read the paper, and this is actually what I would have summarized if I was smart enough to summarize it in such a brief manner. But if you're interested, the paper is in the Lancet, which is a very prestigious journal. It's open access, so you could have a look at it, would you want to. And it was published in February this year, so it's quite fresh. And the name of the paper is the Worldwide Trends in Underweight and Obesity from 1990 to 2022. And this is a pool analysis of 3,663 population representative studies. And with all these studies pooled, they analyzed actually 222 million children, adolescents, and adults. So the sample was big.
I will just say if
yes.
just because you're a little bit hard to understand with the headphones, I don't know if there's any way that you can do it without them or differently, but yeah, it's a little bit.
Do you think that now it's better?
Yeah,
because
I think so.
I'm holding it in front of my mouth, and that usually improves a lot.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does help. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So the next slide is just a big summary, and as I said, disclosure, so that you know this is generated with ChatGPT, the free version. Apparently, the paid version can do it even better and can even compare you papers. So it's astonishing. So the article, as I said, summarizes the analysis of 3,663 population representative studies. It was worldwide, and the number of participants in the pool meta analysis is 222 million children, adolescents, and adults. And it was published in the Lancet, and it presents a comprehensive analysis of the global trends in body weight over the past 3 decades. The next. This study is epidemiological, meaning they did not do any intervention. They are just taking studies that in 1999 were made in all the countries that they could find, and they mentioned the weight and the BMI of the subjects. And then they took studies in the same way that measured weight and BMI in 2022, and that's the way they got so many subjects, because they didn't do any studies. They just summarized the data and made statistics on them. And basically, the take-home message from this is that they did something, and this is important to understand, the combined prevalence of underweight and obesity. So this is people that is either under or overweight. So that means that the combined burden of the two, let's call it diseases because it's easier, has increased or decreased in some country. So the combined prevalence of underweight and obesity in adults has decreased in a very small number of countries, but it has increased in the vast majority of the countries, specifically in 11 countries for women and 17 for men, it has decreased, while in 162 countries for women and 140 for men, it has increased, comparing 1990 data to 2022 data. In 2022, the obesity was more prevalent than underweight in 89% of countries for women and in 73% of countries for men. Conversely, underweight remains more common in certain regions, particularly in South Asia and parts of Africa. But we do have a gigantic epidemic of obesity. Ooh, I don't think I will be able to explain these with this screen that I have, but I will try.
Okay, sorry.
Because I have, maybe because I have a tiny screen. So the colorful graphics on the top compare in women, because these graphs are per gender. This one is for women, but I just put one because I think it's enough to see the trend. The one in the left, the circle, is from 1990, and the one in the right is from 2022. And when you see a pink graph, this graph shows that the prevalence of obesity. And if it is blue, it's the prevalence of underweight. And you can see without, and the names around the circles are the countries, which are way too small to read. But you can see how the obesity prevalence has increased from left to right and how underweight has decreased. I think that is visible, right?
Yeah, very clear.
And if you really want to have a look at the countries, they are grouped by more or less continent, and they are in the same order in both sides of the wheel. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense. And on the bottom, on the left, it is the change from 1990 to 2022. And there is a scale of color on the bottom left. And you could see that in the vast majority of the countries, except India and some countries around it, it has increased. And this is both underweight and overweight people. Although we said before that the prevalence is mostly overweight, but both things, both alterations in weight, undesirables, have increased. And the graphic in the bottom right, the map there shows the prevalence in 2022 and which countries are doing worse, which the redder the country, the worse it's doing. And we can see in the top of Africa and also in Latin America, for some reason, Chile is the worst country from all Latin America. I would not have expected that. I thought it was USA, but it's not. Next, about regional differences. The highest combined prevalence of underweight and obesity was observed in island nations in the Caribbean, Polynesia. Put the map there because it took me a while to figure out exactly where it was. Micronesia and some countries in the Middle East and North Africa. So in these countries, it's astonishing. It's 80% of the population is obese. 80%. I don't know what they eat. I don't know what they do. It would be interesting to know what is the reason, but these
It's a
countries are doing
very
pretty bad.
I mean I'm quite familiar with some of these Polynesian island nations, obviously having lived in New Zealand for some time as well. And like for example, among the Maori, but also from Samoa, etc. Number one, it's a huge it's still a big beauty signal. Like the women are big and are supposed to be big, like big as in a 150-kilo woman. It's beautiful to them. It is to this day. Same for the men though. If you think of the big, strong rugby players, etc. Like it's I mean actually the rugby players are almost too lean, but for them it's part of who they are and they actually are proud of it. So that's a big part of it. But on top of that, similarly to like the Native Americans in North America and so on, now add to a culture which traditionally already eats a diet very high in saturated fat, so like coconut oil and like fatty fish and stuff, but like healthy things. But now add in the alcohol that they're getting, add in fast foods, which like there's if you ever fly to Auckland, New Zealand, the first thing you will see in the probably 10 kilometers around the airport is nothing but Wendy's, McDonald's, Burger King, etc. And like the people they eat there on a daily basis. It's insane. It's like, yeah, anyway. Add that, and then on top of that, add that many of them, they have a very high unemployment rate among the native people. So add that to that, which of course, you know, you move even less and so on. So it's super, super crazy because you don't think of New Zealand as a place where people are very overweight, but especially among the natives, like the Maori, the Samoans, which come over also from their islands. Like in New Zealand, there's tons of people from all these other Polynesian islands. Mostly they come over for rugby in the first place, but then their families just stay. So it's crazy.
Thanks. I really have no clue because I don't have any cultural references. I literally had to Google it because I didn't know where it was. So that's interesting because I then would like to know what is the rate of cardiovascular disease, for
Oh yeah,
example.
very high. Yes.
Okay, then for school-age children and adolescents, the highest combined prevalence was noted in, guess, Polynesia, Micronesia, the Caribbean, Chile. Why? And Qatar. In the case of Chile, is because they are one of the richest countries within Latin America, and they are new rich countries. So the way to show up that you're rich is by having a lot of meat and a lot of calories from processed foods, and that has led to the increase in overweight children and adolescents, among other things. The next one. The changes over time basically is among school-age children and adolescents, the combined prevalence of thinness and obesity has decreased in a few countries, but it has increased in most. Specifically, decreases were observed in 5 countries for girls, 15 for boys, and increases were seen in 140 countries for girls and 137 for boys. The increases in the combined burden of underweight and obesity were primarily driven by a rise in obesity, while declines were due to decrease in underweight or thinness. So this is not anymore a problem of malnutrition in most countries. Next. Interpretation and recommendation. The study highlights the dual challenge of underweight and obesity coexisting globally, with obesity increasingly becoming the dominant issue. The authors suggest that addressing this dual burden requires promoting access to nutritious food and supporting a healthy nutrition transition, particularly in regions where underweight remains prevalent, alongside rising, I cannot read because I see a message of now, alongside obesity rates.
I'm sorry.
And that is it. If anyone is for some reason interested, it's free, and Lisa has the link of the full text. But
Yeah, I might as
just
well send it out with the next week's paper anyway. But yeah, I think it's super interesting, especially in connection with the obesity stuff we read a couple of weeks ago as well, in regards to like where all the countries were ranked and so on. And yeah, it's shocking, I think, especially for a few regions, like on that map. I think the whole Middle East Arabic region, that is alarming, very much
that is
so.
extremely red. So that, and I was extremely shocked with Chile. I would have bet money that the redder country was going to be the United States, but it is not.
I'd love to hear from, because it was a lecture, right? So I mean, we talked a lot now about how the obesity went up and the like underweight did not go down or did not spread that much. But I'd love to hear more about the connection with the dementia and Alzheimer's, because there was not that much mentioned.
Yeah. So because this paper was the paper that he used to reference how obesity is increasing. There was another paper that was the one quoted saying that the obesity increases the risk of dementia by 380%. This paper is still on my list. It's another one because he gave a lecture like putting all together, and I went deep into the first paper that was the one about epidemiology of obesity, and then she had another set of experiments about how Western diet reduces the lifespan of her mice. She has mice, and she has 2 different types of diet, and one is a Western diet, and what they do there is they increase the calories from saturated fat, and these rats' lives are shorter. They develop more dementia-like symptoms, and one of the things that she was studying, let me try to translate this. Yes, we could say like this. they had a Western diet. They removed the Western diet and they put them back in the normal standard diet for the animals. The markers from the inflammation from the previous diet were still there. And that's really sad. So even when they went back to the normal diet, their body still remembered that they had been on a Western diet and they reacted differently to inflammation. They overreacted during the rest of their life, which is just sad. It's extremely sad because I wouldn't distribute this message because it's a lack of hope. It's like, well, you better be pity, that's it for the rest of your life.
That is very, very sad. Yes, absolutely. But like, yeah, I'm so curious once you read the other paper, etc., just like how they're potentially saying how the obesity is like physiologically linked to Alzheimer's. I mean, some of us have maybe read Genius Foods and whatever, but like if you're familiar with Max Lagavere, his mom who died of obesity and not obesity of Alzheimer's, uh she was not by any, she ate a horrible, sad diet type thing, but she was not overweight. So I'd just love to hear what their explanation is in terms of the connection between fat cell
So
or whatever.
the thing is this, I will try to find a way to put it in simpler terms because I don't know if you know the exercise, these neuroscientists that are also vegans, and they had a couple of books. One of them is How to Cure Alzheimer in 100 Days, just like that. And they start with one premise, and that is something that is important for us to think when we think about about Alzheimer, not neurodegeneration in general, and that is only 5% of Alzheimer cases are explained by genetics. Mm-hmm. The rest, the 95% of the cases are due to lifestyle. So they work in California and they have a lifestyle clinic to treat Alzheimer patients or to prevent Alzheimer. Not to cure it, that's beyond, that's too late, but to prevent it. And they work in Loma Linda, and they have two communities. One is the Adventist community that is in one side of the highway, and the other one is the standard American population at the other side of the highway. And the rates of Alzheimer in both populations that are only divided by the highway is alarmingly different. The number of patients that they take from the side that eats a normal American diet is extremely, extremely higher as compared to the Adventists that are one of the blue zones, actually.
Oh, wow.
So therefore, he decided to take as a research topic for his life. Why is that? And he puts a lot of emphasis on the diet of these people and on the relationships that they build, on the communities that they have, on how they move and how they buy. So Alzheimer is intrinsically related to cholesterol metabolism.
Mm-hmm.
It is. Yeah, the Seventh-day Adventist community in Loma Linda is a population of vegetarian, and many of them are vegan. They're eating a plant-based diet. They have minimal intake of saturated fat, high intake of fruits and veggies and fiber. And I don't think that the link is necessarily obesity and Alzheimer's. I think it is the diet and Alzheimer's.
Right.
And the same things that we recommend for prevention of heart disease are the same things that we recommend for the prevention of Alzheimer's. There's somebody that I follow, her name is, she goes by like the cognitive dietitian or something like that. She's a registered dietitian, meaning like master's degree, health professional or licensed, etc. And she shares a lot about Alzheimer's. That's like her biggest thing on her platform, and talking about the diet for prevention of Alzheimer's and the lifestyle habits. So exercise recommendations and that kind of thing. And I find her information to be very accurate and like very informed and just really good. So I can share some of that too. But yeah, I think the link is between the diet and the condition versus the obesity and the condition, because the diet led to the obesity.
But yeah, I mean, according to this study, at least from what I take from it is, or this study is attributing it more to overall energy toxicity as opposed to the quality of this diet. And of course, as we all know, most of the time, if someone consumes that many calories to elicit that kind of obesity, there is going to be a lot of processed food involved, and it's impossible to dissect, blah blah blah. But just purely looking at this paper, it's saying energy toxicity, regardless of from what food, regardless of cholesterol or whatever, leads to Alzheimer's. So I would like to know the actual, yeah, like physiological,
Link.
and obviously cholesterol does play a role there. But yeah, of course,
But I think you're right, Lisa. I mean, when they do these studies, no one tries to put someone in a calorically toxic diet with apples.
Exactly,
So
exactly
what
that.
they do with these rats is like, okay, let's put the rats in a Western diet. And what do we call a Western diet? Well, the standard diet of the rat plus more calories from fat.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But I mean, just yeah, like if we literally just looked at this in isolation, we would not be able to say that it has anything to do with quality and li like Lane Norton or whatever always says, it is just from looking at this, it would just be
Energy toxicity.
energy toxicity exactly. Or how you're, I mean, obviously that leads to inflammation and blah blah blah. So there's so many things to it, but it is super, super interesting.
You
I
also couldn't
will try to read
3,000
the other
calories a
paper.
day. You also couldn't eat 3,000 calories a day of fruits and vegetables and low saturated fat foods. Like inevitably that diet is built on low quality foods.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's difficult to dissect what is the cause and what is the consequence. But yeah, eating processed food makes it possible that you eat a huge amount of calories. So
Absolutely. Nonetheless, like again, like we have to be like factual and stuff, so we can't just say like, hey, it looks like they ate a lot of processed foods because that is not being assessed in this data. Nonetheless,
yeah,
although I
yeah.
1,000% agree with what you guys are saying and what some other studies are most definitely saying. But yeah, when we just look at this in isolation, it literally just says obesity, dementia. So,
Yeah, because this is what they were testing
yeah,
basically.
yeah.
So not level of processed food. But
Yeah.
I will read it because it's also interesting for me, and it's just way too much. There were way too many things that were interesting for me, and they all lead to a lot of papers, and I have a limited amount of time to read papers. But in the symposium that I was in Monday, and I promise that after this I will shut up. They were also talking about mTOR,
Mhm.
and it was like, oh, I know that one. Yes, how this leads to reduction in lifespan when it is activated. I was like,
Well, I mean
interesting.
that's another huge debate, which like yeah, I mean they Lane also always says like you have to kind of you can't just say like mTOR activation necessarily means it increases cancer risk or a risk of dying, because like anything in isolation, if you like if you just looked at health markers right after exercise, you would be able to conclude like exercise is really bad for your health because you're sore, your inflammation is up, etc. So, yeah, but nonetheless, how much mTOR activation is good? We shouldn't constantly be activating mTOR. So, yeah.
Yeah, that I put that one in my list, but it has like priority 9 at the moment.
Sorry, I just wanted
Oh
to
God.
share this. So, I mean,
Oh.
I was gonna say that Polynesian obesity is so common and popular that it's even in Disney comics. Like, look at this Polynesian guy. I don't remember the name of this Disney movie, but is it Moa or something like M
Moana.
Milana, something like that.
Moana,
But I
yeah.
mean, she's here the exception. There are certainly some very beautiful Samoan or Polynesian girls, but this is the norm. Like if we look at that, um, it's just it's what they think is beautiful, being strong and whatever, that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, just wanted to share that. All right. Cool. Well, any any other thoughts or anything on this paper that we read or on Melissa's presentation?
Sorry guys, my internet got broken and I could see the pictures of the people obese and then book it took me out and now it put me back. But I just saw a guy that I have seen in a movie or in a cartoon.
Yeah, exactly. I said that it's so prevalent or prevalent obesity in Polynesia that they even made a Disney character or many Disney characters in that movie obese because that's what the majority of people looks like there. So very, very, very common.
Oh my God. Where are we going? I am really panicking. The more I read, I'm like, what are we going to do? What's gonna happen? Where are my kids going to grow?
Well,
We're
thankfully,
gonna be,
all of us are working against that. So
yep, but I don't know how much we can push against. It feels like we're a mosquito trying to stop an avalanche, whatever that word. What is avalanche anyway?
Avalanche.
Avalanche. It's
Hmm.
like three mosquitoes trying to stop an avalanche. Maybe more mosquitoes, but that's how I feel at the moment. Maybe it will
Well,
change.
oh, that's a funny comparison. Well, thank you everybody for your time. I hope you have a nice rest of your day or evening.
You too. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.